Webinar series with Goose, exploring issues and projects associated with global sustained ocean observing. My name is Albert Fisher. I'm the director of the Global Ocean Observing System Program Office, which is headquartered here at the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO in Paris. So for the next hour, we'll start with an approximately 30-minute presentation from Captain Greg Ulses of the Consortium of Ocean Leadership. He is Vice President and Director of Ocean Observing Programs at Ocean Leadership, and in that capacity, he's Director of the Ocean Observatories Initiative, or OOI. The OOI is a research and observing infrastructure funded by the U.S. National Science Foundation, and it went operational with online streaming data freely accessible by login in January of 2016, just over a year ago. Greg's going to talk about the OOI's capacity and how the international community can engage with and use this resource. After Greg's presentation, we'll conduct a question and answer session by chat, and I'll moderate and select and ask the questions verbally. The chat window is already open and will be open during the presentation if you'd like to ask some clarifying questions. Let me also introduce Leslie Smith, who's a science communicator for the OOI. She's also online with Greg, and you can see her in the camera there. And she will join in the question and answer session. So the session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be posted on the Goose webpage. And Greg, let me turn it over to you for your presentation.
Albert, thanks very much. Thanks for the great intro. Not much to add to that from my end. Given the what looks to be a global span of participants here, I think my opening greeting can range from a good evening through a good afternoon and a good morning to try and capture everybody. And I'm going to plunge in here in just a moment. As Albert mentioned, I'm a recently retired captain in the United States Navy, career naval oceanographer and weather forecaster with some experience managing oceanographic infrastructure programs, which is why I was brought in by the Consortium for Ocean Leadership and the National Science Foundation a year ago this month to become the program director for Ocean Observatories Initiative. And as Albert mentioned, I am going to provide you a brief overview, about 30 minutes, to talk about what the OOI is, what it's doing, how you can get in and get involved with it. Two full disclosure points. One, yes, I am the program director. However, I am not one of my super smart PhD program scientists, nor am I one of my super smart systems engineers. However, as Albert also mentioned, I'm going to be ably backed by my strong right arm, Leslie Smith, who's not only going to participate and help out in the question and answer session, I'm sure she will, as needed, plunge in during the brief on occasion to make sure that I don't screw anything up too badly. That's one full disclosure point. Full disclosure point number two, everything, I think without exception, that I'm going to talk about in these brief remarks here for the next 20 minutes or so can be accessed and expanded upon and looked at in detail on our website, which is right here on this opening slide, oceanobservatories.org. That will come up again and again throughout the brief. I would encourage everybody who hasn't already been on oceanobservatories.org to take a look at it at some point. Everything we're going to talk about today will be covered in more detail on the site. So I'm going to try and dive right in. Okay, always a good way to start on an overview. What is the OOI? I don't like to read text from PowerPoint. You're all perfectly capable of doing that, but I'll hit this at the wave-top level. It is, in fact, an integrated infrastructure of platforms and sensors that are measuring a lot of ocean processes and essential ocean variables. We're going to cover more of that later in the brief. From the seafloor to the air-sea interface. One of the key aspects of OOI, which of course is common to all fixed oceanographic observing systems, and I know this target audience is well aware of this, why do you put fixed oceanographic observatories in the water? Well, you want to be able to observe processes at multiple scales, not only multiple geographic scales, but perhaps more importantly, multiple time scales. As that second sub-bullet indicates, OOI, as all fixed observatories can do, can measure processes from short-term stochastic events all the way up to large-scale decadal cycle events. And yes, the OOI does deliver data to the user community in near real time for free over the internet. We'll talk more about that. And yes, the OOI was designed to contain both extra power and extra capacity to accommodate technical advances, proposals, new instruments can be bolted on. We'll talk a bit more about that later in the brief as well. How did we come to build it? Well, again, I think you'll see there's two slides on this. The OOI planning and history has a lot in common with the planning and history, it's my sense, for other fixed ocean observatories that are part of GOOS, the Global Ocean Observing System. It all begins in 2003 or so, in round numbers, with the thought that we needed one. The National Resource Council committees and community workshops collectively determined that there is a requirement for a large fixed ocean observing system. They in turn then recommended that the National Science Foundation go forward with the design, construction, operation, etc. That's the top bullet there. Community workshops are then held. This should probably sound familiar to this crowd. Community workshops are held to determine what the science requirements for OOI are, where the arrays should be sited to get maximum effect, what sorts of marine infrastructure needs to be engineered to meet those requirements, etc. Then we move into actually designing and building the infrastructure, the instruments, the platforms, etc. Construction on the OOI took place from 2009 through 2016, last year, when it was completed. And I think if I advance here, you get another animation on the side. These OOI mandates go all the way back to really the genesis of the program, the founding documents that came out of the National Research Council, again up in that top left bullet. What was OOI mandated to do from the start? Again, I don't want to plow through all these in detail. These are also, again, on the OOI website. Yes, select critical locations where we can get high science impact, but they're also data sparse due to the challenging nature of the sites. As you'll see, OOI's got a lot of infrastructure deployed in just such areas. And, develop cutting-edge platforms. We want to provide as much real-time data as possible. We do want to provide additional bandwidth, carrying capacity. Again, OOI has been designed to do all of that and meet all of these mandates. So if we keep moving along, this next slide and animations basically graphically capture what I just talked about. As I indicated in the previous slide, I think a lot of the language that I just ran through by design was designed to accommodate this pre-existing GOOS framework for how do you design and build ocean observing infrastructure. Again, I don't want to run through this graphic in detail. I think a lot of this target audience is familiar with it. But the thing I've always liked about it, in fact, I'll step through a couple of the animations here and just bring this whole thing up. Maybe. Hang on. There we go. This is kind of the full span of all of the pretty pictures that we want to talk about here. Where did OOI get its genesis? Here we go. See that book? It's the same book, Enabling the Ocean, that's in the upper left-hand corner of the graphic. This is my personal desk copy. This thing is the document that goes all the way back to the National Research Council in 2003. Initial requirements and recommendations to NSF flowed out of there. And then in the upper right corner, we're capturing the fact that science requirements were developed. As you move down to the bottom right, marine infrastructure was engineered to meet science requirements. In some cases, we were able to use pre-existing commercial off-the-shelf technology. In other cases, in many cases, OOI had to design specialized marine infrastructure and engineer it from the ground up, particularly in places such as the cabled array and others. More on that. And then in the far left column, or far left corner, yes, OOI data is free, and it is accessible through the OOI website. All of that effectively falls in line with the GOOS framework that exists in this graphic in the center of your presentation here. The thing I like about the GOOS framework is it stays alive. It's not static. The arrows on the left side and moving up into the top and down into the main graphic indicate, and this I think will be part, I don't think it, I know it will be part of the 25-year life cycle of OOI. Issues will continue to drive changing essential ocean variables that we want to collect, which is captured kind of down in the middle here. The operations, deployment, and maintenance cycle, or OM&E, operations, maintenance, enhancement that we would call it, is defined, and it changes throughout the life cycle of the program to meet changing user requirements. All right, so how did we build it? What were we trying to do? Now let's talk briefly about what OOI is attempting to measure. Again, I have a sense that probably these main science themes that we'll talk about are familiar to people on this target audience who participate in other ocean observing systems. Two pretty pictures here. The first pretty picture is capturing the ocean processes that we're attempting to measure in the water column and at the air-sea interface. There are four of them that are represented up on the top there: ocean-atmosphere exchange, climate variability and ocean circulation, turbulent mixing, biophysical interactions, and the coastal ocean dynamics and ecosystems. We have 2 coastal arrays that are focused on that. Again, more on that later in the brief coming up soon. Those are the science themes that we pursue, again, in the water column and at the air-sea interface. If I go to the next pretty picture here, this represents the science themes we're pursuing at or near the seafloor. Fluid rock interaction, subsea floor biosphere, and of course plate scale ocean geodynamics. As you'll see later in the brief, quite a few of these sorts of processes are primarily being measured by our cabled array, which is effectively also functioning as a volcanic observatory. It's specifically sited across a plate boundary in some hydrothermal vent fields and other areas where it can track and measure these kind of ocean processes. So those are effectively the main science themes that, again, drive all the way back to the workshops and things like that that occurred during the last decade to figure out what we wanted to design OOI to do. Okay, a couple more scene setter slides here. What were the major accomplishments of OOI in 2016? Certainly the main one, which is captured in a couple of bullets here, is that OOI is now fully operational. 2016 was the first full year of operations. It also marked the year that the construction phase of OOI was completed, and the National Science Foundation accepted and commissioned the entire infrastructure in June. That certainly is the main accomplishment in 2016. Data is in fact flowing. Here's a few numbers, more on this later in the brief. We have 83 platforms, 857 instruments, 100,000 plus scientific and data engineering products are coming in off of the hardware that's in the water. And again, the system is fully operational. A couple of representative graphics here on the side, pretty pictures. This is one of our surface buoys, just interesting size and scale there on those. Again, I know other ocean observing systems have got those. Quite a bit of the work we do, particularly on the cabled array, is conducted with remote ROVs. This is Ropos, for example, which is a representative sample of the ROVs that we put in the water to work on the cabled array. Our cyber infrastructure, more on that later in the brief, but we've had a lot of progress made on our cyber infrastructure, the data discovery, delivery, and display capabilities that are available for users. And 9 turn cruises were completed. One thing we probably don't really highlight too much elsewhere in the program here is that all of the infrastructure we have in the water is actually pulled and turned either once or twice a year through a set series of turn cruises. The coastal arrays are flipped and turned twice a year, and the global arrays are all pulled out of the water and replaced once a year, primarily just due to time and distance and difficulty getting out to those sites. Now that we are fully operational, the last thing I want to note, and I'm going to end the brief by talking more about this, is that we've got a lot more opportunity space now to focus on some things that are of great interest to us: partnerships, engagement, and dialogue. As part of that, we're very thankful to GOOS for reaching out to us and asking us to start participating in this series of webinars. And we'll get back to that a little bit later as well. All right, so that's some big stuff that we've done in 2016. What do we want to focus on in 2017? In addition, of course, to just operations and maintenance of the arrays. I would be willing to bet that during the 25-year lifespan of OOI, no matter how many program directors the program may end up going through, the top bullet that I have on this slide here, cyber infrastructure upgrades and enhancements are our top priority. I am willing to bet you that will probably remain the top priority of OOI for the lifespan of the program. Why is that? Well, if you talk to anyone who's been operating ocean observing systems for a long time, as many of you in the audience here I know have been, it's been my experience that without exception, they've all reported back to me that this task here is never done. We always want to focus on improving data display, discovery, delivery capabilities, the user experience for people who want to get on a site and get at our data. We always want to improve our data in re-ingest, verification, validation processes. I've got more on that later in the brief, but these are always going to be top priorities for us. One of the main things we're going to do in 2017 is sit down and figure out what the steady state operations for the OOI actually look like. 2016 was our first year of full operations. Was it completely representative of steady state operations? Probably not. As I indicated, it was a transition year from construction to operations. So One of the things that we're focusing on, not only here, but at the implementing organizations, the 4 universities that run our cyber infrastructure and all of the marine infrastructure, what does steady state operations are going to look like? What are our long-term budgeting requirements going to be? What does OOI really cost to run? Obviously, we've got quite a bit of that cased and figured out, but there are pieces and parts of that where there is still some uncertainty, just given the fact that we've got a limited amount of time in sustained operations. And what, using lessons learned, next to last bullet, and this again is a task that I'm sure many of you pursue with your own observatories, what can we do to make it run leaner, more efficiently? So we're looking at these kind of things. We want to greatly expand on what we're talking about here with this last bullet: partnerships, engagement, and dialogue. The less time we have to spend on construction and the associated administration of it, the more time we're going to be able to spend in this sort of trade space, which is really where we want to be living. Okay, so let's keep going. The next few slides are going to break down the OOI infrastructure in detail. We're going to talk about these 7 arrays, these platforms, these instruments, the data products that are coming off of them. Again, I would encourage everybody, this is an overview. By definition, we're not going to be able to cover this stuff in great detail. I would encourage people to get into the OOI website and take a look at an expanded discussion on all of these sorts of topics. Okay, we have got 2 coastal arrays that, as the text implies here, are cross-shelf moored arrays. They're specifically cited to go across a shelf feature. We've got moored arrays supplemented by mobile assets to observe the very dynamic coastal environment. We're looking at things like upwelling. We're examining shelf break fronts, etc. I think if I go to these 2, there's probably 3 animations here. I'm just going to pull them all up right now. One of our coastal arrays, the Endurance Array, is located off the Oregon and Washington coast. The second coastal array, captured in the middle here, is the Pioneer Array, located off the coast of New England. The graphic on the far side, again, in a moment, I'll get to a slide that expands on descriptions of the actual moored arrays themselves. But this graphic is a representative sample of what these things look like. This is Pioneer Array. Endurance is effectively laid out the same way. You've got a series of moored arrays that run down the shelf to the slope base. And then, as you can see, there is a picture of an AUV or glider in there. We use both. More on that momentarily. We use mobile assets to do interstitial sampling in between the sites where we've actually got these arrays. The arrays, some of them are profiler arrays that have got ADCPs and wire following profilers moving up and down them. The others have a series of fixed sensors that are located at various points throughout the moorings. More to follow on that. We have 2 of those. We then have got 4 global arrays. As the text implies here, again, we've got mobile arrays and moored assets. More to follow on that. We're trying to, these things were specifically cited at 4, this goes back to the workshops and things like that, back at the genesis of the program. They were specifically cited at 4 sparsely sampled high-latitude regions. Those of you who are familiar with Station Papa, probably quite a number of you, there was and is quite a bit of pre-existing infrastructure up there. There's been fixed ocean systems up there for quite some time. We've developed an array to complement the hardware that's already up there. The other 3 sites at Erminger Sea and the 2 high-latitude sites in the southern hemisphere, Argentine Basin and the Southern Ocean at 55 South, those were sites that were selected where we had to put all the infrastructure in. Again, these are sparsely sampled high-latitude sites that were picked by the workshops and determined to be sites where we could get a great deal of benefit in understanding climate and ocean circulation by citing things there. I think there's an animation here. There is. These graphics are, again, a fairly representative sample of what all 4 of the global arrays effectively look exactly the same. There's a surface mooring, a profiling mooring. I've got some slides that talk about what those look like. And then there are 3 flanking moorings. I'm not actually sure that you're able to track the arrow here, but you can see these flanking moorings here are located out on the fringes of the array. And then we have mobile assets. There's a glider circling around in here, again, assuming you're able to see the arrow. We use gliders in the global arrays not only to collect their own data, do their own profiling, but the global arrays, the majority of the buoys out there, or rather the moorings, do not have surface features. So we use the ocean gliders as effectively acoustic data mules to gather the data off of those arrays and then the glider will phone home and transmit the data off of those arrays. So we're using the gliders in two ways on the global sites. Okay. The cabled array, I think there might be another animation or two here. Yeah, there are. The cabled array is difficult to capture in one or two graphics. There's quite a bit going on out there. We have one cabled array, which is located off the Oregon-Washington coast. It is a seafloor array that consists of fiber optic and electrical cables that run from a shore station in Pacific City, Oregon. Again, if you can see the arrow that's indicated up here, out to a series of stations. One of them is blown up here on the lower left at the cabled axial seamount. And basically, oops, I guess there you go. Didn't mean to do that, but now you can see the full Monty here. We've got these graphics basically show how this thing is set up. We've got these fiber optic and electrical cables that run out to the science stations. The cables provide both two-way communication to the seafloor and water column instrumentation, and they provide power. One of the interesting things about the cabled array is that it's specifically sited near the coastal moored endurance array that I talked about earlier. The two arrays work to complement one another to capture the full range of oceanic processes from the seafloor all the way up to the surface across that entire area. Also, the cabled array, it's important to point out, quite a bit of the instrumentation is located on the bottom, focused on these volcanic activities, methane seeps, the vent communities, etc. But they also have a series of mooring or profilers, both shallow and deep profilers that are captured in the graphic on the lower right here. Again, they are powered by the cabled array, but the profilers are running up and down and gathering profile data from the seafloor to at or near the ocean surface as well. So that's effectively an overview of what the cabled array looks like. Again, it's specifically designed to lay across plate boundaries on the Juan de Fuca plate and function as a volcanic observatory and a straight-up oceanic observatory. All right, so let's keep going here. We've got a few more slides to cover. All right, the next few slides are, as promised, blow-ups of what some of these moorings look like. We have got a series of basically surface moorings and subsurface flanking moorings. The mooring on the right, actually let me start at the mooring on the left. All of the surface moorings, this one's from Coastal Endurance, they basically look and feel exactly the same way. You've got anchored to the bottom a seafloor multifunction node, and then you've got the cable that runs up to a surface feature, a surface buoy that's at the air-sea interface, and then there are a series of instrument platforms that are located at fixed locations throughout the length of the mooring. The profiler, or rather the flanking moorings, one of which is represented on the right. In fact, I think if I do an animation here, there we go. Here's some pictures that actually show some of this hardware going into the water on turn cruises. The upper left shows one of those multifunction nodes, and then the remaining ones, there's a surface buoy on the lower right there being deployed. The pictures of the orange globe, for example, and these yellow globes are represented as the various sorts of floats that allow the moorings and the risers to stay in position. So again, the main difference between the flanking moorings is that they don't have a surface feature. They contain the same instrument packages, they function basically the same way, but they don't have a surface feature, which is why on the global arrays we drive gliders in the vicinity of the flanking moorings to collect the data off of them acoustically and then transmit that data back up into the cyber infrastructure. So that's what those moorings look like. Again, we have a total of 20 of them. Many are surface moorings, and then the other ones have got the subsurface flanking moorings. Those are all located out on the global arrays. Okay, here are what we call profiler moorings. As I've indicated previously, we have a lot of different kinds of profilers out on these arrays. The representative graphic here of a profiler mooring at Pioneer shows ADCPs and wire following profilers that move up and down the wire as indicated here. We've also got coastal surface piercing profilers. That is located down here on the lower right. It's a representative graphic. Those are located out on the Coastal Endurance Array. And we've got the shallow and deep profilers that I described that are basically powered from the cabled array nodes, and those are indicated over on the left side. I'm going to speed up just a tad here because we're starting to come up on transition to Q&A. These graphics and animations here show some representations of the kind of hardware we have out on the cabled instrumented sites. As the graphic a few slides ago indicated, the cable runs out to high-power junction boxes. Power has been stepped down to low-power junction boxes like you see here in the middle, and then distributed out to things like this benthic experiment package, which sits on the bottom, and any number of instruments. These slides over here on the left, these pictures not only show things like the high-definition video camera and lights that are located near or out on the axial C-mount, but also are showing some of the instruments that we actually have put up on top of the hydrothermal vents to sample processes there. All right, let's keep going. Yes, we use mobile assets as discussed. We use primarily gliders, ocean gliders. I think there's one animation on this. Oops, hang on, I'm going to go back. There we go. Primarily ocean gliders. They are used on all of the array sites, as I've indicated previously. A representative sample of a sampling pattern out on Pioneer is located in the middle there. The upper left corner of that graphic shows the planned track that we want to keep the glider moving on all the time. That's what we have the glider pilot trying to meet, to capture the data that's been reviewed by the program scientists and been reviewed by the community. This path is the optimal path to get the profilers we want this glider to get. As you can see, there's a lot of spaghetti around this. Gliders do drift. Of course, they're always collecting data, which is a good thing. Unless or until they get biofouled, like you see here on the lower right, that does happen with our gliders and with everyone else's. But yes, we use gliders. I've talked about how we use them in the coastal and global arrays. Again, the difference on the global arrays is that we use them as data mules. Yet we also use powered autonomous underwater vehicles. Those are Remus 600 vehicles in the lower left there. Specifically, we only use those on the Pioneer site because we're trying to get sampling done across things like frontal features where we need to be able to power through those. We don't want to have the kind of drift that you see in the middle here with gliders. So yes, we've got mobile assets as well. Okay, what kind of instruments do we have on the OOI? I'm going to step through these quickly. Again, please get on OOI.org. This stuff over here on the right represents the website. Every one of the arrays, there's a picture of an array over here. All the instruments on every array are broken down, including what's out on each instrument, what's it sampling. You can also even link right into the data from that instrument by going to OOI.org. This is a representative sample of the kinds of instruments that we have and sensors that we have deployed out on the arrays. It is not all-inclusive, and in many cases we have more than one type of something. For example, ADCPs. We have more than one type of ADCP. I'm going to keep moving along here to make sure we don't fall too far behind. These graphics show what kinds of data products we're after. What kinds of processes are we trying to measure? What kinds of data products are we trying to gather? I like this graphic on the right. Thanks, Leslie Smith. I think this is a winner. This kind of Venn diagram is trying to capture the fact in the upper big globe here, those are processes that we're capturing, data products we're capturing at the air-sea interface. The water column is indicated in the middle. Those are things we're chasing through the water column itself with those fixed instrument packages, wirefolder profilers, gliders, etc. And then, of course, the seafloor processes are captured in the Venn, the piece of the Venn diagram on the bottom. Here on the left, this should look familiar to many of this crowd, the GOOS Essential Ocean Variables. If I hit one animation here, yes, this worked. Everything that now just got circled, those are GOOS EOVs that OOI is measuring and sampling. Okay, let's keep going. How do you get to the data? The bottom line is the data is free of charge to the user community. Now, full disclosure here, this is an OOI overview. We have talked with GOOS about participating in a second webinar, which we're looking forward to in the future, to focus on data. How do you get it? What kinds of data do we have? More of an expansive breakdown on our QA/QC process, et cetera, et cetera. This will be done at the overview level, though certainly we'd welcome questions at the end of the period here. So, yes, it's free. Yes, it's in near real time. And you can get it off the web. So let's talk more about that. It is open to all. And, oh, by the way, here I'll go back here. This rates a little bit of discussion. There are no constraints on who publishes using OOI data or when. Only an acknowledgement is required. Please use the data. That's what it's out there for the international community as well. Get on it, use it, publish. That's great. Only acknowledgement is required. And there are more details on that, again, on the OOI website, oceanobservatories.org. I think there's an animation here. I'm just going to bring it up. There are many paths to the data. This, again, is all on the OOI website, so I really don't want to belabor this too much. This is an example of the OOI data portal over here on the left. And underneath that graphic is everything you can get off of it. Yes, you can get streaming data. You can do plotting. There are asynchronous downloads. You can work into machine-to-machine. There's metadata. You can get at the metadata, the asset management. All those things are traceable and findable through OOI, the data portal there. There are other access points that will allow you to get data via threads, netcdf files, ERDAP. These are capabilities that are either exist or are coming online right now. Raw data is available through the data portal. There's a raw data portal. All of our cruise data from the Turn cruises is also available. You can link to it from the OOI website. Water sampling, all the other physical samples that were taken during the OOI Turn cruises. It's all there. Our seismometer data and a lot of our hydrophone data, et cetera, is available on the IRIS website. More to follow on that in the next couple slides as I close up. Let's talk about data quality control. I'm just going to pull all the animations up right now. I think I got them all. I think I'll focus initially on talking about number 1 and number 4 here. How do we do data quality control? Well, of course, we start by doing a lot of rigorous testing of all of our instruments before they ever even go in the water, captured in sort of that picture over there on the left. We also test the instruments when they come back out of the water. All of the instrument testing and sampling is documented in the cruise reports. We also try, while we're deploying the arrays and while they're in the water, while the sensors and instruments are in the water, to take advantage of any data validation opportunity that we have. We overlap the recovery and deployment time so that we can run the arrays briefly in parallel to make sure that they, the array we just put in the water is tracking along and tracking the same kinds of data and getting the same kind of results as the array we're about to pull out. We've talked quite a bit about gliders and their role not only in independently collecting data but also verifying and validating the data that's coming off the array instruments. And whenever possible, more to follow on this, we're comparing our data with what's coming off of non-OOI assets and observatories. Okay, that's some boilerplate blocking and tackling that we do for validation. Now, we have a data team that's located at Rutgers University. They have designed the automated QC algorithms. Again, those should look very familiar to you for those of you who are in the ocean observing business. The automated QC algorithms are listed here. The graphic in the lower right is an example of a spike, or rather a data anomaly that was detected in red, and there's some explanatory, again, no ability to explain this in detail on this sort of a graphic, but a data anomaly was detected, and there's explanatory remarks that were entered in physically by the data team. The 4 data evaluators, the human in the loop QC, is doing data set plotting, evaluation, and annotation. Okay, so let's keep going. We have an education portal. For brevity, I'm going to skip past this and just point out that one of the mandates of OOI is that we have a portal in here that's designed for educators, primarily at, say, community college levels, undergraduate levels, to be able to design and develop lesson plans that are focused on ocean science. I'm running over here, so I'm just going to skip over this and note that the education portal can be accessed through the main OOI website. It's a fantastic feature. I would encourage you to get in there and take a look at it. Hey, get involved, please. The last couple slides are going to highlight this even more. We really want, and I'm happy to use this forum to encourage you all to get on the OOI website, kick the tires on it, use the data, and equally important, there are many ways through help desks and other data forums that you can get online and let our data team and others know when you think you're uncovering any issues, problems with the website, look and feel of it, or with the data itself. Please tell us. That's the only way that this system is going to get any better. So please use the data. Please get engaged. There are a number of workshops, webinars, et cetera, that occur throughout the year. Please track that, get involved, participate, help us out. Yes, seek funding through OOI-related NSF proposals. This is not going to be a detailed discussion of how to submit the proposals, but all of that information is available out on the OOI website. Both national and international researchers are encouraged to participate and apply for NSF-related proposals. So please get involved. If you can volunteer, I mean, certainly at the high end of that, if you can volunteer your time as a subject matter expert to help us look at some of these data streams, that would be welcomed. You can find out how to do all of that on the OOI website. I will be done talking in the next 1 to 2 minutes, I promise, because I'm running over just a bit. In keeping with partnerships, engagement, and dialogue, as all of you know, the IUS system in the U.S. is the United States contribution to the Global Ocean Observing System, GOOS. OOI is the National Science Foundation's contribution to IUS. Therefore, we very much want to get our data discoverable and accessible in as many other places as we can. We have started to do a lot of that in 2016, more to follow. You can get our data in relevant co-located IUS sites, for example, the NANUS site, the Maricus site. Our data is discoverable and accessible there. And in the IUS glider DAC, all of that's represented graphically on this slide. We've talked about the fact that IRIS, I know a lot of you are familiar with that, the Incorporated Research Institute for Seismology. That is an NSF-funded data portal that's specifically designed for the seismology community. Therefore, where else would we want to put the relevant pieces and parts of OOI data? We have a partnership with IRIS, and those data sets are accessible on the IRIS portal. A great example of that in action, lucky us, we happen to have our equipment deployed in time to actually measure an active volcanic event that occurred in 2015. It's all captured here graphically. An April 24th, 2015 eruption was actually tracked in real time by the seismology of the seismic instruments and other instruments we had out there on the cabled array. And all that data is available through IRIS. All right, I think I only have 1 or 2 more slides. Last thing I want to do is indicate that next time we do this in a year or less, I want to have a lot more icons up on this slide here. This is a slide that captures all of our partners to date, people with whom we're working, exchanging data, collaborating. You all know who these people are. They're parts of the Global Ocean Observing community that's on the line here with us today. We want to do more of this, so please stay engaged with us, stay involved. And I'm going to wrap this up right now. And I think we can shift over to questions. I'm sorry I ran a little bit over, but Albert, I'm going to kick it over to you, and we'll see where we're at with the Q&A.
All right, thank you very much, Greg. A great presentation, a lot of energy from your side. We can feel it and we can hear it. And so let me open it up to questions from the audience. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat box. And to kick things off, I'll ask you a couple of questions. So you talked about in the abstract, actually, I don't think you mentioned it in your talk, that there's been terabytes of data already downloaded from the cyber infrastructure for use by scientists, and you have a great open data policy. Do you actually keep track of how the data is being used, how many publications or which publications are being made with OOI data?
I will take a cut at that, and then I'll let Leslie, who's a lot smarter than me, take a cut at it as well. The short answer is yes. We are certainly trying to keep track of that. Further upstream, we are keeping very good statistics on what sorts of data is being downloaded, by whom. We're able to track all of that. In fact, we make a lot of that information available for the user community to look at on the OOI website. We update that pretty regularly. We also send that stuff along to the Science Foundation. And we're certainly attempting very much to track who's using the data for what sorts of publications are coming out. I mean, obviously, that's a real measure of success, right? I mean, this thing isn't really any good to anyone if we're not starting to see publications and the data being used. So we are trying to track that in cooperation with the Science Foundation. So Leslie, I'm going to see if you can add anything to that.
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on the head there. We have statistics that track what data is being downloaded and where in the world it's being downloaded, so we can kind of see a metric of who's using the data, both through our own data portal as well as the thread server and raw data server, and then IRIS shares their data with us. And we really want to track publications because, as Greg says, that's the metric for success. You know, if people are using our data, then that's where we're really meeting the needs of the community. And so we're starting to track publications. Obviously, since data just started coming out, it's going to be a little bit till we see a lot, but we encourage everyone, if you are using the data, to let us know about it, because we'd love to highlight you on the website. And also we'll be tracking the publications for when people mention us in the acknowledgement section. So that's really key, to acknowledge the use of the OOI data when you do publications.
And we have a question from Venkat about saying that this is an amazing initiative and kudos to your team. What is your data return? And maybe I'll add to that question. You're obviously pushing the technology envelope with all of these sites. Obviously, there's been some failures. What have they taught you, those failures?
Goodness. Well, let me try and work my way back through the question. Yes, obviously there have been some failures. Quite a bit of this instrumentation, specifically on the cabled array, but also elsewhere, some of it's been designed and engineered from the ground up, and OOI represents its first operational deployments. We have had some of these instruments perform less well than expected, some of the profiling instruments on the cabled array, and some of the other instruments we've had. We have had some difficulties with them, teething pains. You know, we're at the stage now, I think, where in terms of the instruments and hardware on the arrays, we're still trying to incorporate lessons learned that are allowing us to make design changes we need to get these things operating in a more robust fashion. Another area where we're having some teething pains is in the deployment of our ocean gliders. As many of you know, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with gliders. We certainly get reliability statistics that generally are tracking right along with, say, community norms. But in particular, one of the problems we have is that we're trying to push the envelope in terms of how long you can keep a glider in the water operating. Out on the global sites, we are trying to keep these gliders in the water continuously for 1 year, and we're having problems with that, frankly. Out on the ragged edge of that, we're encountering some failures and some losses. Again, is that out of bounds? Not necessarily, but we're looking through that, and really what we're trying to do is figure out, hey, can we get these gliders to perform better? If we can't, because we really are pushing the envelope, are there other ways that we can get the data that we need off of those sites? I may, unless I'll turn this over to Leslie in a minute, I may need to get a little bit more clarification on the question about data return. But Leslie, I'm going to see if I've missed anything on the questions to date and whether you can take a cut at the data return issue.
Yeah, so just to add to your point about our infrastructure, they were, pushing the edge on, trying to expand beyond its limits in terms of deployment time and extreme conditions. So one of the things that we're doing is trying to reach out to other members of the ocean observation community and see what they think, and what they're doing, and share lessons learned with each other. So for example, a few weeks ago, we were a part of the glider workshop down at the Stennis Space Center, where we could learn and share ideas with other observatories. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what I understand about the data return question as well.
Maybe, Albert, if you like, we can certainly just keep moving and re-attack on that. It's your call.
Yep. So, well, let's go to Frank's question, actually, which is, thanks you for the presentation. He appreciates the effort to collect some of the biological and ecological essential ocean variables at the same place you're collecting physical and chemical data. And I could mention geological data as well. The specific question is, what phytoplankton and zooplankton data do you collect? And he's a little concerned about calling chlorophyll fluorescence phytoplankton because there's more things to look at in phytoplankton in terms of diversity and productivity as well.
Yeah, so there certainly is. And so in terms of the instrumentation that we have, yes, the phytoplankton data is predominantly chlorophyll fluorescence data. And so we have 2 wavelength fluorometers, 3 wavelength fluorometers as well that'll capture CDOM measurements. So we don't have a comprehensive look at phytoplankton, and a lot of that is the need to have something that can be deployed for a year at a time or 6 months at a time in terms of the coastal environment. And so we can't go out with tow nets and collect actual phytoplankton. That said, as Greg alluded to earlier in the talk, we're looking for expanding our observatory. We're looking for people with specific science questions who want to add specific types of instrumentation. So if there's a sensor out there that can measure phytoplankton better than what we have, we encourage you to submit a proposal to add that instrumentation to our infrastructure. In terms of zooplankton, what we have is a bioacoustic sonar and that's going to be using acoustic signals to look at zooplankton and fish populations in the water.
And so let me ask a couple of related questions. One is NSF has obviously envisioned this as a sustained observing infrastructure, but what's its vision for how long this capacity is going to be out in the water? And does it expect that the system will change over time? Will the number of variables change over time, which you've alluded to? The answer is yes. But we have a question from Enrique Montes. Are there any plans to expand the OOI to the tropics?
Well, I think, Albert, the question that just came in over the chat feature actually syncs up nicely with your questions. I think I can tackle all three. I'll try the chat question first. Are there any plans to expand OOI to the tropics? Two ways to answer that. The short one is probably no. There really aren't any plans that I'm aware of to do large-scale expansion and development of new arrays in tropical locations. That, I think, is an accurate answer. Now, that being said, one of the 7 arrays that I briefed, the Pioneer Array, was actually designed to be relocatable. It actually can be packed up, moved, and relocated, and that is supposed to happen over the life cycle of the project. And I think the interval is a 5 to 7 year interval. The entire array is supposed to be able to get packed up and relocated to another location. And I believe that NSF has every intention of doing that. That location hasn't been determined, nor has the actual lift and shift date for the Pioneer Array been discussed either. I believe that's due to occur sometime within the next 1 to 2 calendar years. So is it possible that that array can be relocated to a tropical location? I would say yes. But will there be any new hardware built? The short answer to that is no, which again I think segues into Albert's 2 questions. NSF envisioned and OOI was designed to have a 25-year lifespan. That's how long NSF is committed to fund the project. The hardware is expected to be in the water collecting data for up to 25 years, if not longer. But the 25-year benchmark is what NSF has published about the lifespan of the array. And again, going all the way back to enabling the ocean and some of the other bedrock documents, the OOI was specifically designed to allow for tech refresh, and the science plan is going to be periodically readdressed, reevaluated, and looked at primarily by the Science Foundation through the use of the OOI Facilities Board. And it is possible that the main science themes will change. That's been part of the operational concept of OOI from the beginning. The science themes can be changed. The instruments to collect said science themes can be changed throughout the lifespan of the project. Now, the only other caveat I'll offer on that is that it is, as is the case, I think, with everyone's ocean observing systems, there are budgetary pressures. They exist. There will be a decrease in the amount of funding and operations and maintenance for this thing beyond the year 2018. However, as I indicated, long-term operating costs are still under a lot of research and evaluation right now. We certainly don't have any immediate indications that we're going to have to shut anything off, and NSF is going to keep funding this program in operations, maintenance, and execution throughout the 25-year span. So I'll see if there's any follow-ups to that.
Well, let me ask you, I really welcome your call for increasing engagement. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Leslie.
Oh, no, I was just saying we're all good.
Okay. So, again, welcoming the call for increased engagement. You mentioned the opportunity of submitting OOI-related NSF proposals, and since we have quite an international audience, let me just clarify, is that limited to U.S. scientists, or can scientists from other countries participate in that?
Leslie, why don't I let you make a quick run at that, and then I'll follow up as needed.
Okay. Yes, they are. We are accepting, well, not we. The National Science Foundation is accepting proposals from folks internationally, and there are actually, we know of some international proposals that are already being reviewed for adding infrastructure. So that is definitely a possibility. And then one thing to definitely push is that you don't need an accepted NSF proposal to use the data, to answer scientific questions with the data, to publish with the data. Anyone can use it. Anyone who can access our website can use our website. And so that cuts across internationally around the world. So yes, you can submit proposals, you can use the data, and then one thing to talk about in terms of proposal submission, we have a good page on our website under the Researchers tab, and that'll give you more details about submitting a proposal, with also an email address at NSF that you can write to for more information about it. And the proposals are every February and August of each year is the NSF proposal submission time. And then prior to those time periods, we run specific webinars and have staff consultation opportunities. So if you're interested in adding infrastructure, we strongly, strongly encourage you to attend a webinar and set up a time to meet with a member of the OOI engineering staff, because you're going to need to make sure that what you're asking to add to the infrastructure is actually feasible, and that's something that the NSF is going to be looking for. So for example, if you have a 4-centimeter plug and we have a 3-centimeter outlet, that's not going to work. So that's kind of what they're looking for, is a sign off that yes, what you're looking at is actually feasible given our current infrastructure.
The only thing I would add to that, Leslie, thanks very much, is that as she's indicated, there are a lot of pre-scheduled opportunities, informational webinars, et cetera, that are set up throughout the year for researchers who want to find out more about the infrastructure in detail and find out about how to submit proposals. If you want to find out about those or track any of these kind of events, first of all, again, go to oceanobservatories.org. And also, you can, after going to oceanobservatories.org, these things are always advertised there, you can also get on a distribution list for recurring emails that Leslie sends out to a user group so that you can be kept informed about all of these sorts of opportunities. So I would certainly encourage you all to do that.
Let me ask you a question about coordination generally. So GOOS is all about coordination between countries, between different ocean observing networks. And so let me ask you about, you described the process of how the sites were selected as being a very science workshop-driven process driven by the NSF. Obviously, fixed site observatories, the interpretation of the data from them can be helped by all kinds of ancillary data, remotely sensed data, data from more broad-scale observing systems. So has there been an attempt, or will there be an attempt in the future as you re-site some of these arrays to coordinate with the other observing infrastructure? And then the other question about the coordination is about coordination with other countries. So obviously some of your sites, Station Papa has been occupied over many years by Canada as well as the US. The sites off the coasts of South America are relevant to South American scientists and South American interests. What is your international coordination about how you design and where you site the observatories, and do you think that there's opportunities in the future with that respect? So coordination with other networks and coordination with other countries.
Yeah, I think I can take
Certainly, I think a really good example. Okay, you can go for it.
Yeah, the perils of having two answers. I'll try first, and then Leslie will stop me if I mess this up too badly. The short answer is there's quite a bit of that going on, Albert. I think, again, initially going back to the initial sighting, you talked about Station Papa. The Erminger Sea Station, for example, was specifically sited in a way that was coordinated with our partners in OSNAP to be able to complement the arrays and other data gathering that's going on up there. We have got, primarily through a specific set of program scientists that are identified and partially funded by OOI that are part of my science oversight committee. They serve not only as an advisory committee to me under the auspices of the NSF, but they also serve as a really important outreach and engagement arm, particularly in engaging with some of our international partners on the global stations. For example, Bob Weller, some of you might be familiar with him, the program scientist at Woods Hole, who's focused on the global arrays. He actually spends a fair amount of his time on the road internationally, plugging in a lot with our South American partners to talk about ways that we can make the best use of our Southern Ocean and Argentine Basin data and how we can collaborate more with partners down there. He also spends a fair amount of time connected with OSNAP and talking with our partners that participate there. So I think there's a great deal of that going on. I think that was evident in the initial sighting of the arrays, as we pointed out. Now again, Albert, are there going to be new large-scale arrays deployed? Again, I don't think that will happen. I really don't believe that's within the scope of the program. that if and when any of the hardware is resited at all, absolutely that will be done in coordination with partners to make sure we're moving it to places that we're going to get the most international bang for the buck and the best sites where we can complement other global ocean observing systems. That's my cut at that, and Leslie, I'll turn it over to you because I'm sure I left some things out there.
No, that was perfect. I think the example that I wanted to bring up was the Erminger Sea Array, and that array is within the area that OSNAP is looking at. And for those of you not familiar with OSNAP, that's the Overturning in the Subpolar Atlantic program, and it's an international program, folks in the UK, folks in China, France, Germany, and so since some of our moorings are co-located in the key areas that they're looking at, right away now we have an instance where they can use the data, use our data to help answer their broader question, and so our infrastructure is seamlessly integrated into their program. Another good example of international collaboration is our cousins to the north, Ocean Networks Canada. They have a cabled array just north of us off the coast of British Columbia, and this is the Venus and Neptune arrays. And so our cabled array was kind of designed at a similar time that their cabled arrays were designed. And so you can really get a regional look at geological processes all happening on the Juan de Fuca plate. And so that's another international collaboration we have.
Yeah, and you've mentioned the cost of the system, and that one of your priorities for 2017 is to think about how to be leaner and more efficient. And obviously before, Greg, you came to OOI, there was a bit of controversy with the scientific community about how much was being put into observing infrastructure versus funding science. So can you give us, how do you argue that balance? And can you give us some hints about maybe which directions OOI might be going to become leaner and more efficient?
Well, I can address some of those issues, Albert. Again, full disclosure here, expectation management, I'm certainly not going to be able to speak at the highest levels as a designated NSF spokesperson on how they're addressing that broader, let's say, creative tension between funding that's being put into fixed oceanographic observatories versus broader ocean science. That certainly, as you point out, that is a creative tension that exists. I'm certain it's not limited to NSF and their funding. Now, and I'm sure, again, a lot of the target audience is familiar with some of the major recent actions by the NSF to address that issue. They will be introducing some modest cuts to the long-term operations and maintenance budget of OOI starting in 2018 and beyond to free up more money to go into other core science, ocean science programs. That's one issue that they're going to do. But really more importantly, right, how can we run this program as lean as we can? And actually, we're already seeing that start to occur. We are very confident as we enter 2017, as we did the budgeting process late in 2016, and used the lessons learned that we've gathered from a year of having what we would call sustained operations. We were able to enter in with an but operations and maintenance budget that was 5% less than, effectively 5% less than the budget we entered into the 2016 timeframe with. And we think that, how do you find the 5%? Well, we're gaining efficiencies and finding out how long some of our instruments can stay in the water before they need to be turned or refurbished. We're gaining efficiencies in everything from glider operations to cruise operations. How can we get these things done cheaper? We're trying to find efficiencies everywhere we can in labor costs, shifts between contract labor forces and full-time equivalent labor forces. There's all sorts of ways, just as is the case with any large-scale science and engineering program, a large facility, a large infrastructure like this. There are any and all opportunities we can to try to gain efficiencies and run this program for less money. We're trying to take advantage of them. We already did, as I indicated, we're seeing efficiencies in the 2017 budgeting process and in our operations and execution. But they're primarily focused on all the usual suspects. Can we keep equipment in the water longer? Can we do less refurbishment on it? Can we operate fewer gliders in an area and still get the same amount of data gathered? Can we save money on labor costs as we juggle contract versus full-time equivalent labor forces, these kinds of things? So again, I hope that, Leslie, anything to add to that, or I don't know?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in terms of the thought of the budget and why spend all this money on OOI. What's the point? So we're no stranger to the fact that in oceanography, in kind of global science, you have to put a big investment in. So whether it's an investment to create and launch a satellite, whether it's an investment to build a research vessel, or an investment to build ocean observing infrastructure, it takes an investment. But then what you end up with is you end up with something that the community can use. You end up with something that'll streamline the community's costs in terms of running their own research. So every school doesn't need to own their own research vessel. Every lab doesn't need to own their own mooring or moored array in the Southern Ocean. These are resources that everyone can use that'll cut down the cost on those researchers who want to use them. And just as not everyone needs to use a global class vessel in their research, not everyone will need to use the OOI. And in both cases, that's okay. It's all part about building the oceanographic infrastructure in order to do research. And one of the wonderful things about the OOI is that anyone can use it at any time. So you're not stuck with a limited number of weeks that a ship can be deployed or a limited number of areas that a ship can go into. You have open access data that's available for everyone. There's no cap. We don't say, well, 100 people downloaded data from the CTD, so you can't have it. Anyone and everyone can use the data. And that's one of the special things about observatories that you guys know throughout your global system, and one of the special things about the OOI.
And just a real quick follow-up editorial comment on that that I lost in the shuffle when I was focusing on cost savings. I think Leslie raised some very good points. I mean, they're primarily editorial in nature, but they're important. I get frustrated, again, you know, my primary job is to run this program. I'm not really being paid to address these broader creative tension themes, but when I take this thing on the road, when I go to AGU workshops and ocean science meetings, I get a little bit frustrated with the either-or tension of fixed oceanographic observatories versus, say, shipboard observations, et cetera. I think Leslie did a great job of painting that picture. I mean, the two complement each other very, very well. And I think that in many cases, I have been surprised. I was aware of these tensions coming in a year ago when I took over leadership of the program, but my feedback from users who have come up to talk to me on the floor of conference rooms has been primarily positive. They're coming from smaller universities. They're coming from the undergraduate community or you know, new postdocs that are saying, hey, it's fantastic that I can get at these kind of data sets and I don't have to get cruise time and get out on a ship to go chase them. They're there for me. I can get at them right now. The last thing I'll point out is, again, I mean, we talked about this at the beginning of the talk. There are a lot of data sets that fixed ocean observatories are needed to gather that you will never get from collecting through sort of transitory shipboard deployments. I think in a lot of ways the kind of big science themes we're chasing after in the decades ahead, climate variability, et cetera, I mean, they're only going to be able to be explored through decadal, long-term data sets that we can really only gather from either remote sensing or fixed oceanographic observatories. I think there's an important place for this sort of hardware in the spectrum of things that's getting funded by the NSF and its international equivalents.
So we are almost out of time, but let me ask you to also talk about one of the other collateral benefits you mentioned very briefly, which is the educational opportunities. Obviously, having this kind of infrastructure and having the bandwidth to some of the observatories to look at things in real time and near real time allows people to be on the seafloor, to be in part of the ocean away from their classroom or away from wherever they are. So do you want to say a few more words about those educational programs and some of the outreach that you're able to do with the infrastructure?
I'll do a little bit, and then I know that high energy Leslie's going to be able to jump in because this is really in her swim lane, not only in the work she does with OOI, but in her many other venues. Just two things I want to highlight. One of them is we had to skip over the education portal, the EPE portal, for the purposes of brevity. That's a fantastic capability. And when we get on the road and go out to conferences and we're manning booths, I'm amazed at how much draw that gets from educators and people who are walking by. The ability to go in and have preset lesson plans, do conceptualization of ocean processes, and use OOI data to do that. It's been very, very well received by a community that we probably don't serve as well as we should. in terms of the undergraduate crowds, the community science crowds, probably really even high school crowds. I've been approached by high school teachers that use the EPE. It's fantastic. And you know, just to follow up on your point and close on this, Albert, a great side benefit of being the program director, the other day I was the guest 5th grade science teacher at Flint Hill Elementary School, where my daughter goes to school here near the DC area, and taught the whole 5th grade and sat down and did just what you said. I was able to plug right into OOI data in real time, cameras, and point out, hey, this stuff's going on right now, a mile off the, a few miles off the coast, or a mile down and 200 miles off the coast. Here's stuff that's coming in from the ocean floor, and these kids can look at it, and they were just enthralled. They loved what was going on, and you can get those kind of crowds excited and energized and motivated, and that's what's great about this. That's the future of our community right there. And these kind of observing systems and the kind of stuff you can throw up on the glass in real time to really put those kids in the water, they love it. So Leslie, I don't know, you can probably add to that because you're living in that world as well. Anyone still out there?
Oh, we seem to have lost Leslie.
I guess we did.
Yeah, so
I guess you'll just
think
have
we lost
to end
Leslie
on my
unfortunately.
animated editorial comments about education there. I think it's fantastic. This is the kind of stuff that I love about running.
A very positive comment. And let me thank you again very much for your presentation. Great capacity, great sustained capacity, and great opportunities for the scientific community to engage. And thank you very much for the talk. And thanks everyone for participating.
I look forward to engaging with you and your users again.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.